Many parents think they love their children equally, without setting anyone apart and giving them all the same rules. Or is that what they want to think? This difference is noticed by both adults and the children themselves. What kind of consequences result from that kind of atmosphere? God, I don't want to see him. He ruined my childhood, Emily thought. Emily and Brian were siblings with a 2-year age difference, but there was nothing between them except familial blood. Children, no matter how many there are like fingers on your hand. No matter the wound, it hurts them all the same. This was her mother's favorite phrase. She loved to repeat it in public in any situation. But actually, everything was different. One day, Brian pushed Emily and she fell off the swing. She fell hard and cut her head. "Why are you crying? Your head's still where it should be," Teresa said, cleaning her injury and putting a Band-Aid on it. "Don't worry. It'll heal before the wedding. Go run back outside. You left your brother alone." But when Brian fell because he wasn't paying attention and scraped his knee, Teresa was ready to call an ambulance. She didn't know how to approach her boy, ran around him and wailed. Of course, she blamed everything on his older sister, who didn't watch him. "You have a terrible nanny who wasn't watching you. My poor boy fell and hurt himself. Maybe we should call an ambulance. Maybe something's broken," she wailed. "Teresa, what are you talking about? What's broken? He just scraped his knee," her own mother tried to tell her. Melinda, Emily and Brian's maternal grandmother, who often intervened for her granddaughter, seeing how the children were unequally treated. Brian was loved, kissed, hugged, and felt sorry for. Always justified and backed up, while Emily was always guilty and got in trouble for the both of them. "Why do you treat Emily like a stranger? How could you divide your children?" Melinda asked her daughter many times. "Mom, you're wrong. I love my children equally, but Emma is older and should understand." "How much older is she? 2 years? Look at her. She's small, skinny, and frail, but Brian's strong. And you still won't say there's a difference between them," Melinda said, not giving up. "He's your son and you baby him. What do you want from them? If you would be stricter with him, he wouldn't be so spoiled at 3 years old." These conversations never led to anything. Teresa thought she treated them equally, and if she favored her son, it was only slightly and because he was younger. Emily's father also had a soft spot for his son, and Emily was treated as his nanny. Emily suffered. She didn't have enough attention, love, warmth, or care from her parents because it was all directed to her younger brother. When Brian took and broke Emily's toys, their parents always said, "Why are you upset? He'll play with it and give it back," or, "Okay, he broke it. It's okay. He's still small, and you're blowing it out of proportion." And if she started to cry because of it, they would immediately say, "How could you? Hysterics because of a doll? Are your toys more important than your brother?" When Emily said she had nothing to play with because Brian had broken all her toys, they told her, "You only blame him. You're already grown. Think of something to do." Teresa was different in public. Looking like the perfect family and the perfect mother and housewife in public was extremely important to her. She wanted to be praised and used as an example. Her children were clean, tidy, and well-dressed. She treated Emily well in public, so no one, other than Melinda, had any idea what was going on. Emily was supposed to watch after her brother in school like usual, make sure he studied well, that he didn't forget things, and that no one upset him. One day, on the way home from school, Emily refused to carry his backpack since it had a lot of things. So Brian started yelling and poking Emily. A teacher noticed, came up to them, and scolded Brian. "This is my nanny. She has to help me with everything," Brian said. When she tried to explain to him that he was wrong and he shouldn't treat his sister that way, Brian threw a tantrum. He threw all his things, fell to the floor, and started screaming. And in his anger, he pushed the teacher and spit on her. Their parents were called to the principal's office the next day. The teacher asked his parents to pay attention to their son's behavior. "He's too spoiled. His behavior, especially how he treats his sister, is unacceptable. I'm asking you to think about what I've said," she finished. They thought that, and this is what happened. Teresa blamed Emily. Not only did she refuse to help her brother, but she also made him hysterical, which led to their perfect family having this scandal. The unthinking mother started calling her daughter names and cursing at her. She was so furious, she started hitting Emily with whatever she got her hands on. Her father was able to pull the woman away when he got home from work on time. Emily got sick the next day. From stress, fear, and humiliation. She had a high fever. These were the happiest days in Emily's life. Her mom probably felt guilty and didn't leave her side for a second. She was loving, attentive, called her loving names, and even kissed her. Brian even noticed and didn't make noise or bother her. Her father brought her a present that evening and forbade Brian from touching it. "If you have to beat me first in order to love me like this, then I accept," she said suddenly, putting her gift to the side. Her parents caught their breath when they heard those words. After that, no one ever touched her again. Emily graduated school with excellent grades and went to college on a scholarship. She happily left her parents' home and moved to another city. Finally, she could breathe easily. There was no Brian to look after, to help, and to be blamed for his inadequacies. She studied and worked and lived in a dorm. Her parents called rarely, and if they did call, it wasn't to ask about her life. The calls were usually about Brian. Teresa always found a reason to accuse Emily. Brian didn't get accepted anywhere because Emily took poor care of him, or Brian was hanging out in a bad crowd because Emily wasn't there to watch him. Everything was like it always was. Emily was happy she could just put the phone down and ignore her. Brian was lazy. He spent entire days on the couch. He couldn't keep a job for more than a week. He relied on his parents and wasn't bothered by that. Emily graduated from university and got a good job. She was able to afford a nice apartment and quickly got a mortgage. Only Melinda knew about the mortgage because she told no one else. Melinda was the only person who supported Emily at the time. When Teresa learned that Emily was renting an apartment, she demanded that Emily take Brian in. Maybe things would improve for him in the big city. But to everyone's surprise, Emily said no. She had finally set her boundaries like Melinda had always told her to. Her grandma always said she needed to learn to stand up for herself. She was able to say no and finally set those boundaries. Teresa didn't understand. Like always, Emily listened to how she was an ungrateful daughter, that she was an animal that didn't care about her own brother, and many other things. But Emily didn't react as strongly to her mother's accusations and harsh words anymore. Her parents didn't call anymore. But one day, Teresa called to tell Emily that Melinda got really sick. She meant a lot to Emily, so she went and took her back to her apartment. Emily took great care of her. With her granddaughter's care, Melinda got better. When she was healthy and able to leave, Emily asked her grandma to stay. "You're the most important person to me in my life, and we get along wonderfully. Please stay with me," she said. Melinda agreed, but said she would be selling all her property and giving the money to Emily so that she could pay off her mortgage faster. So she did. Emily soon thereafter met a wonderful man and got married. When Teresa learned that Emily would be moving to live with her husband, she told Emily about Brian moving there again. But Emily said that Melinda would be living there. "Wonderful, then she can watch after your brother," her mother said. But Emily said no again. She said no once and for all. After that, Teresa stopped talking to Emily. Her father would call rarely. But Emily made peace with it, and despite everything, she was happy. She had a wonderful husband, her beloved grandmother, an excellent home, an outstanding job, and she was pregnant. As an unloved child, she could let things go, but she knew for sure that no matter how many children she had, she would never treat them differently. She experienced that herself and knew what it could lead to.